Okay, so we've talked about two
The
forms
two
of fake.
fakes.
Yeah.
The third fake is what we call past consideration. The idea being that the act came before the promise. I think there's a great case in your textbook about this, about Allen Iverson. The idea was that back in the day before Allen Iverson became famous, Allen Iverson said to, well, his buddy, that's Allen Iverson, his
Right.
buddy, I said to Allen, Allen, I got a great name for you, man.
Okay, what's the name?
The name is You Are the Answer.
Okay, great. So at this point, I'm called the answer. And then I say to you, hey, if I ever make it rich, I'm going to pay you for giving me that name.
Right. And then later on, I see him after he hits, what, 55 against the Lakers in the first game of the playoffs. And I say, Alan, hey, it's your buddy. Where's that million you promised me? Alan says,
I'm not
sorry,
giving you
no,
$1 million.
no. So
Right.
the idea is I sue Alan. I sue him. And the idea is, well, he doesn't have to pay me. Why not? Because I voluntarily gave him that name. He did not bargain for it. I gave it to him. If he had said to me, okay, buddy, if you give me the name, I'll give you $1 million, that would have been different. But I just gave him the name. So there was no bargain there. I just gave it. So the idea is that my act of giving the name came before the promise, as opposed to the promise inducing my giving him the name. That's the third fake. That's called past consideration, or the act came before the promise. The fourth fake is the one that you're least likely to see. It's called illusory promise. The idea is really not a promise at all. In other words, I say I'll take you out to the movies on Friday if I want to, then I really don't have to. It's always in my control. I have an unrestricted way out of that. So if I have an unrestricted way out, I really have no commitment. That's different, of course, if I said I'll take you to the movies on Friday if it is over 60 degrees or under 10 degrees or whatever. That's out of my control. Therefore, that's just a condition that has to occur. It's a restricted exit. So unrestricted exits are illusory. I can get out anytime, totally up to me. So there's really no promise at all. That's a fourth fake. That's called illusory promises. So you got four fakes that where there's no consideration because there's no bargain for exchange for some reason or another. We've got the gifts, pre-existing duty, past consideration, illusory promises. You've got to take a very, very close look at all four of those.
Right. And those are the big elements of consideration. That's the big element of actually this exam,
Yeah.
because you have to see what induced each party to enter into the bargain, what kind of bargain for exchange. And one of the things that you uh, focused on was with respect to pre-existing duty. What happens once we already form this
Yes.
relationship? Now
And
think about it. We already
Have
formed the
a legally
relationship.
binding contract. We've got it already.
That's right.
And now we're trying to change it or modify
Right.
it.
And so you guys should keep that visual in mind. The contract is already formed, and now they're trying to do something else. They're trying to form yet another relationship, another contractual relationship. You can't because you already have
Yeah, you
that.
need new consideration in order to do that.
Right.
So again, remember, promises only mean something. There's something given in return for them that benefits the person who made the promise.
Right. And so why don't we talk about that thing? Let's go on to prima facie element number one, really, which is the whole notion of agreement, offering, and acceptance. Because you heard Dean Paschal refer to one word, a bilateral contract. Bilateral means that there was a promise for a promise. And again, you have to evaluate what was done, what was said to induce each party. So when you talk about agreement, the first thing that has to happen, there has to be an offer that's made. So if I promise you something, notice what I'm asking for in return. Either I'm asking for a return promise or I'm asking for performance. If I say, I promise to pay you $500 in exchange for your promise to paint my basement, as soon as
I
he
give
gives
that
me his
return promise. We've got a contract.
we have a contract because he's given me his promise. Now, I may not get my basement painted until next week. I may not pay him until 2 weeks
But I've
from
made
now.
a commitment.
But we've made the commitment and we formed the contractual relationship. That's a bilateral contract. If, however, I say to him, I will pay you $500 if you paint my basement.
If.
Notice what I said. If. And that's the key word. He often says to the students here, it's a little word, but it makes a big difference. Because what I'm looking for is not a return promise, but performance. The moment he shows up to paint my basement, we have what we call a unilateral contract, because that's one promise that has been accepted by performance. Now we're going to stop right here and we'll come back in just a moment. But for now, you understand bilateral versus unilateral when it comes to the way the offer was made and accepted. We'll be right back.